Lebanese news agency reports 2 suicide bombers blew themselves up within a few hundred feet of each other.
The bottom line military question at this hour, is there in fact a coup underway in Turkey?
The terrorist group has made their presence known in the country, carrying out several gruesome beheadings.
The Middle East, a place that makes you think of fear, uncertainty, the unknown. For most of us living in the West, it's such a distant place. Something we only see on TV or read about online. And despite the differences in language and culture, young people living in the Middle East are no different than you and I. Jesus said, "Go and share the gospel to every corner of the world." For most of us, reaching that corner, that seems impossible. And if we're honest, our fears brought us to this conclusion that the Middle East, it seems pretty hopeless.
Deadly car bombing in Beirut.
What could we possibly do?
Lebanese finance minister and
Yeah. Okay. Right here.
Is this the owner?
No, it's not him.
No,
Okay.
it isn't. All right. Okay.
Actually, why don't we just explain this quickly? Guys, this is the place for tonight. This is where we're playing. So we've decided to, Nick's decided to, then we'll go basically right here. The stage will kind of, the cube will start or end there, and you'll be out front. And we'll park the vans a little ways behind you to give some backdrop, and some coverage. And then we'll play out this way, getting the most amount of open space, and hopefully the most amount of room for people to crowd in and watch you.
Okay. So facing that way.
Yeah.
Facing that way.
It's going to be windy, but
It's going to be a really good night.
The wind's gonna stop.
And it doesn't matter. Yes, the winds are going to stop, but it's going to be a really good night.
yeah.
So I think, we should be in a prayerful attitude today as we're setting up and stuff. But I think it's going to be a really amazing night. And so, Lord, I thank you that we can be here in this place because you love the people here. We ask that you continue to move powerfully, Lord. And as we lift up the cross.
The way No Longer Music works is that we use all sorts of artistic mediums. I mean, obviously this came from you a long time ago, this idea of using art and music as a way to present the clear gospel message. And so we have this first half that is entertainment and trying to attract people, and it uses video and special effects and fire and all these types of things, and then it transitions into a visual depiction of the cross. And prior to this, we had this understanding that it's great because you can communicate in Berlin or wherever, in Sao Paulo or in the US or all these different contexts. But even we're thinking, there's got to be a limit.
Samanda is a city near Antioch, Antakya, but Antioch in the Bible, right on the Mediterranean Sea. And so we go to this place, and the wind is blowing, and it's sort of out in the middle of nowhere at the end of the town.
And there was no church there, right?
So it's an unreached city, and it's this beach town. I mean, this is very much where the Apostle Paul would have been walking through, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, this is Bible territory. So we're setting up, and our setup is pretty elaborate. Like, we have this whole stage that we set up and build, and I remember in a curtain, and the wind was blowing. It felt like a sail, and we had video projection and all this stuff. It was a pretty elaborate thing that we brought.
We had to run like a cord from the cafe.
Right, one single cord for power. But so then we're setting up, and there was no one around. Remember that? And it just felt like What are we doing?
And actually we had to have 2 people holding down the curtain, or it would blow away.
And so we're setting up. You head out for a walk to when we had some flyers, and what happens?
Yeah, so I'm like, okay, while they're setting up, I'll invite people. So I go into the main part of the town, and I see this young Turkish guy, and I think he'll be perfect for the concert. So I go up to him, hey, you got to come to our concert. And he takes me and he shoves me against a wall, and he pulls out this knife, and it was like a knife I've never seen before because it was shaped like a needle. And I found out later it's called an assassin's knife because if you're stabbed with it, it makes such a small hole that there's no blood comes out.
A Christian rock band in the Middle East. In a town where you could feel the darkness like the dark weather that was all around us. The beach is supposed to be a beautiful place. But this beach was filled with trash and dead animals. And honestly, it felt like an illustration of the spiritual death that was all around us. There was no church in this town, and the local missionary said there had not been public proclamation in this place for over 1,000 years. On top of that, it just seemed like a ghost town. The whole place was empty, and we were wondering, what were we doing here? Why would God have brought us to a place like this?
And so he's getting ready to stab me with this knife, and then this guy on the street tells him to not do it, to leave me alone. And so he kind of like, really, it was unbelievable, and he really heavy. And so I start walking back, and I felt, it was almost like Satan was screaming in my ears, and I felt like he was saying, this is my village. I felt like Satan was saying to me, you can't talk about Jesus here.
I remember you came back and you're like, don't tell everyone, but someone just pulled a knife out on me. I'm like, okay.
Well, because I wanted everyone to be...
not to freak out, except for me. So we're setting up and we're getting ready to start, and next thing you know, it's like people coming from everywhere.
It's like they waited until one unified moment.
It was just this
crazy,
like synergy. I can't explain it, but to the point I think we had between 500 and 1,000 people.
What ended up happening was incredible. People started coming in from everywhere. What was a ghost town was now a crowded place filled with enthusiastic people excited to see our show. Every concert starts with special effects and entertainment, a way to draw people in and create a good atmosphere. But then it transitions to a drama that shows the life, the death, and the resurrection of Jesus. We really had no idea how the crowd was going to react. It's one thing to just play a rock show in a conservative Muslim town, but to openly share who Jesus is, we had no idea what to expect. Not long before this tour, our translator had almost been beaten to death for being a Christian. Despite the risks, we knew that God was calling us to be faithful and not deny Him.
You see, we were made to have a friendship with God.
Bizler Tanrı'yla bir ilişki içinde olmak için yaratıldık.
You know, like a good father would have with this beautiful little girl.
Tıpkı bir babanın çocuklarıyla olan ilişkisi gibi. Bakın buradaki küçük çocuk gibi.
But I saw that mother with a baby, and I felt like God said, go pick up that baby and explain the gospel.
God is a father who loves his children.
Ama Tanrı çocuklarını seven bir baba gibidir.
Just like this mother loves her little girl.
Tıpkı bu anne nasıl evladını seviyorsa onun gibi.
She doesn't want anything bad to happen to her because she's a good mother. Sent his son to earth.
Onu dünyaya gönderdi.
To be a man.
Bir insan bedeninde dünyaya gönderdi.
To show us that God loves us and that he cares about us.
Bize bir şey göstermek için Tanrı bizi seviyor ve bizim için kaygılanıyor.
And then Jesus died.
Ve İsa Mesih çarmıhta öldü.
Because of the bad things that I have done and the bad things that you have done.
benim yaptığım günahlar, sizin işlediğiniz günahlardan dolayı çarmıhta öldü.
But Jesus came back to life.
Ama ölümden dirildi İsa Mesih.
And because Jesus came back to life,
İsa Mesih ölümden dirildiği için
I can have a relationship with my Father again.
And then you're inviting people to respond, and people are just coming over.
It was unbelievable.
Yeah, I'd say, I don't know, a third of the crowd at least.
Like
maybe
couple hundred people minimum responding. And I mean, our local partners and these guys, these Turkish people are like, I'd never seen anything like this. And one of the missionaries that we were with, another one, I mean, he wrote us a letter later and he said, I don't think the gospel's been preached publicly like this in 1,000 years. And I don't know how you know that, but just the context of that, like in that particular spot, it was incredible breakthrough.
I want to introduce to you my son Aaron. Size oğlum Aaron'ı tanıtacağım. And he wants to tell you more about Jesus. O size İsa Mesih hakkında daha fazla bilgi verecek. We've come from all over the world. Bu takım dünyanın her tarafından toplanan bir takım. Because of who Jesus is. Bizim bir araya gelmemizin sebebi İsa Mesih'in kim olduğudur. You see, the most natural thing in the world. Dünyadaki en doğal şey, what we were made for. What we were made for is to have a relationship with Jesus, with our God. Biz insanlar Tanrı'yla bir ilişki kurmak için yaratıldık.
And you said, okay, everybody repeat this prayer. And I thought, okay, here's where they're not gonna, you might get a couple people. And all these voices, with their, also in the context of their friends being around.
God, thank you that you love me. Tanrım beni sevdiğin için teşekkür ederim. Thank you that Jesus died for me. İsa Mesih benim günahlarım yüzünden öldü. Teşekkür ederim. Come into my life. Benim yaşamıma gel Tanrım. Benim yaşamıma gel Tanrım. I want to know you. Seni tanımak istiyorum. Seni tanımak istiyorum. Amen. İsa'nın adıyla. Amin. Amin.
What's important to me is, man, we had that moment preceding that, where that time of seeking God and desperately asking Him to move. And it also the faithfulness of the people that had been working in that area for a while. And this sense of, I really felt the sense of the Holy Spirit that God, do something now, in a sense of honor the work that they had done. And we had the privilege of really seeing some visible fruit that many of them hadn't. And not necessarily because we did anything special.
Our tour of Turkey was unbelievable. Concert after concert, we saw God move, show up in power, and blow away every misconception we had. There really is no place that the gospel can't be preached and where people will not listen. This experience in Turkey gave us the courage to continue to follow God deeper into the Middle East, and the following year, our faith would be stretched even further.
All right, there's some people here tonight who've come, and they say if we do the show, they're going to be violent. Will be violence. Okay, and so that's why they're afraid to do the show. There's people here who have threatened to like cause a riot or something if we do the show.
So we were going to do this show in a public square, but it was next to a church. But the thing about religion in the Middle East and in Beirut, especially in Lebanon, is it's very political and it's divided. It's very territorial. So they have their own militia group. They have political power. And we're going to do our show in this area. And we even went and met with some of the people from this religious group and asked for permission, can we do a show here? But some of the people from this church were not happy with the fact we were doing a show. So when we arrived to do the show, they turned up and they said, if you guys do a show, we're going to cause violence in the crowd. You have to cancel your show.
Okay, hello everybody. Okay, I wanted to say how much we love your city. It's been such a privilege for us to be here in Beirut.
أنا بس حابب أقول قد إيه أنا حابب بلدكم لأنه كتير هو شيء بنفتخر فيه إنه نكون إحنا ببيروت.
And we're already making plans for when we can come back here again.
ونحن already عم نعمل خطط كيف إنه نرجع ونكون معكم مرة تانية.
But we're not going to do our concert tonight.
بس إحنا مش حنعمل شو تبعنا الليلة.
It's okay, it's okay.
There are people here that were gonna beat on us basically, and police with machine guns coming, and I don't know. That's what they say. I don't know. And the reason that because I had a long conversation with one of the leaders from the church, and she said, if you do a concert tonight, there are people who promise to be violent. And so I thought,
and I'm sure she's leading her.
She said, that's, so, because I really explained to her in detail everything, and I thought, well, so then I said, well, then can I just go on the stage and speak? We won't do any concert.
So we just decided that we'd preach from the stage. David said, let's not risk this, let's just preach. We don't need to do a show, we'll preach. There was a whole crowd there already waiting for the show, and this was the crazy thing. Anya's there with a camera out, filming everything, getting into the crowd, asking people questions, why are you here, what are you here for? I'd say probably around 80% of that crowd were Muslim, and there were all sorts of ages. There were families there were people that had been following us because they'd seen another show and they wanted to see that show. But even as David was on the stage and started preaching, the people in the crowd started fighting. And it was basically the crowd that had come to see the show fighting against these, this religious group, these Christians or nominal Christians who were there saying, you can't do your show.
So Beirut is very much cosmopolitan, free and crazy city. So Lebanon allows its citizens to express what they think. So, and because the young generation is skeptical about religion, skeptical towards culture, you would find people take their freedom to express that, which leads to Beirut being very much an epicenter or a thriving hub for culture and arts and music. Every evening you could go to concerts, to graffiti workshops, or to design workshops, or poetry nights, or you name it. It's very much a vibrating city. Again, it's people really like taking the opportunity to express their desires, to express their longings, to express their dissatisfaction. So this for us opens up a great way, or creates a great platform to come in and proclaim the gospel. It would be wrong to think that because they're Arabs and because we're in the Middle East, we should try and create bridges by kind of communicating Jesus through the Quran, or kind of taking up those verses in the Quran where it talks about Jesus and all that sort of stuff. But with the young generation in the Middle East who has already disconnected from institutionalized religion, that won't work, or that would just be even more proof for them that we're not understanding them. Whereas music and art and creative means or digital means are just the perfect ways to connect with that generation and talk about Jesus.
It says in the Bible that you were created for good works in advance, before you were born.
انه انتم تحضرتوا من قبل ما تخلقوا لتعملوا اشياء صالحه.
What? Okay, if you want to know Jesus, I have to stop now, okay?
And then our organizer that from Lebanon, he goes, you gotta get out of here. They're calling up people from all over the city with guns. Remember, it was really
tense, and we didn't know what was going on. And there was fist fights breaking out. Yep.
So if you want to know Jesus, you're saying, yes, I want to give my life to Jesus, then I want you to come with me to the middle of this place.
أنا مشبور وقف هلا بس إذا أنت حابب تعرف يسوع، please قرب لعندي أنا لقدام.
Come. If you want to know Jesus, come and kneel with me. Come here.
قرب واركع معي.
In this square, don't let anyone stop you. If you want to know Jesus.
ما تخلي حدا يبعدك عن يسوع، ما تخلي حدا يبعدك عن معرفة يسوع.
You want to know God? You want to know God?
Yes!
You want to have a friendship with Him?
So it was this really weird situation, and we went off the stage, went down into the crowd to try to talk to people. David's trying to preach. He invited people to respond, and they did. Like, there are these young guys kneeling in the middle of this crowd.
There's an act of humility. If you don't want to kneel, don't. But if you want to give your life to Jesus, kneel with me.
And while they're kneeling to pray, this one dude turns up and he's like all aggressive and he says, if you don't stop preaching, I'm going to break your jaw.
While Dave was speaking and I translating, he told me, if you didn't shut up, I'll break your jaw.
So this was someone from this kind of political church group,
and they had a gun. Yeah, and so I kept preaching, and then finally he said, you have to stop. So
yeah, you were talking in the middle of the crowd, and he actually pulled your arm down.
Jesus, thank you that you love me. يا رب اشكرك انه انت بتحبني. احنا وقفنا الشغل ليش وقف ليش هذا الامر مني انا مش انا مصمم اوكي لا وديع اوكي وديع ولا شيء نهائيا خلاص شعبيه بيخبطوكم هلا دخلوا وقت اللي هو خلاص عم بقول لك ولا شيء بليز خلاص عم بقول لك.
And it was kind of one of those chaotic riot experiences where we didn't really know why it was happening. There's arguments going on, people yelling.
إذا بتريدوا الحفلة خلصت ما عندي مشكلة شو ما عملتوا ما عندي مشكلة شو ما عملتوا.
She didn't say, she said سربوا على بيوتكم, which is not, you can say go home, and what she said was leave now, go to your house, go to your homes, leave. Bark or don't bark, the show is over. She treated people like dogs.
They canceled the concert because they thinking that Jesus cannot be preached, but in one way. You know, they are. I think they're closed-minded. So I don't know.
Take your camera away and let's check in only on stage.
We're so sad. We're so mad. And you know, we're here in the Middle East, closed-minded and stuff. We came here the third time to see the show. And you know, and we're sorry, but we're so grateful.
Like, people ask me this too, where are they playing? We'll follow them, where are they playing? And one of them was that Muslim father you met. It was like, where are they playing? I'll take my children, where are they playing? I'm like, I'm sorry, they're leaving tonight to Turkey. He's like, but they're coming back. I said, yes, next year.
You know, it was an incredibly hard, dramatic thing that happened, but I think it continues to speak to the fact that the openness, right, of these young Middle Easterners, but they do live in crazy places and in crazy political situations. And I remember my overwhelming impression of Lebanon every time I go there is that I just feel so sad for these young people because they feel so trapped. You know, they see the West, they see, you know, the freedom of the West, and of course a lot of it's destructive. But at the same time, they're trapped, you know, and even like mobility is a privilege. The fact that I can just get on a plane and almost all of the world is open to me. And a lot of these Lebanese young people, they can't go anywhere, you know, and war could break out at any minute. And it's just, you just felt heartbroken.
Yeah, and they are wanting to know Jesus.
Our faith was certainly tested in Beirut, Lebanon. Although we were disappointed we couldn't play the show, David was able to preach, and many people responded to follow Jesus and were connected to the local church. Despite not even playing a single note, the hunger for the gospel was amazing. And right there in front of the stage, young Muslims knelt to receive Jesus. We continue to see that God has a heart for these young people and that there are no closed doors for him.
Be praying for you in Turkey and beyond.
You guys, despite everything, a lot of great things happened tonight. So actually it was really productive. Even though you didn't get to do your show. God is great. It was wonderful to have you. You got to come back.
Gaza. After 5 days of fighting, more than 150 Palestinians dead.
Tell us what we're seeing. We're seeing people running.
Okay, what you're seeing is the riot police are slowly moving back. The demonstrators are moving forward.
Today, the United Nations is asking for 48 hours of relief in the fighting to break from the violence between the government regime and rebel forces.
So yeah, obviously when we in the West think about the Middle East or think about what's happening in the Middle East, what comes up are pictures of bombs and suicide bombers and tanks and Kalashnikovs and all that sort of stuff. And this is, I mean, obviously that's part of the reality that is happening on the ground when you talk about Syria or the war, like the situation in Aleppo and Iraq and that sort of thing. But it is also, I mean, we constantly need to remind ourselves that this doesn't apply to a lot of people who live there also, to people who are not involved in the war, to people who actually are whose lives are destroyed by the war and who are just, who don't want to have anything to do with it, nor with the ideology that fuels that kind of stuff. Yeah, I mean, most people, or I mean, all of the people we're in touch with or that we know completely disconnect again from an Islamic or fundamentalist ideology that flashes out. And it's actually the tragic thing is that because the young generation in the Middle East is aware and is educated and is sophisticated, they know how we think about them. They know that like we as Westerners think that they're all terrorists, which is a source of frustration for them, because whereas they want to be part of what's going on in the West and they want to exactly identify with what young people do in the West, they are aware that like their peers in the West see them in a completely wrong light. And so, yeah, that's pretty frustrating actually. Yeah.
David Pierce, welcome.
Thank you.
So you're an American singer who has lived in Amsterdam for 16 years, and you say that you can't change the world once you're dead.
Yes, that's true.
Is that why you're calling your band No Longer Music? What do you mean by No Longer Music?
To us, the message is the most important part of our band.
So miraculously, we were given this opportunity. I was invited to do this live interview on MTV Lebanon. And so it was like, how do I do this and how much should I talk about? And I just had this really strong conviction that I had to talk about Jesus, which broke all the rules. It's like, first of all, it was the Middle East. And then secondly, we're on this big commercial secular station, so in every way it was against the rules, but I really felt like I needed to talk about how Jesus is about love and not hate.
Well, the whole point of our show is to bring this story, and the story is about how we've become polluted by the world. I mean, it's pretty hard to not, if you live in a sewer, to not get polluted by it. And so we've become polluted, we've become dirty. And God is pure. He's more pure than the sun. And so because of that, I can't get close to him. But because God is a good father, you know, a lot of people think that God, if he is there, he's angry and he's just looking to judge us. But because he's a good father, and he knew that we couldn't do anything to help ourselves, he sent Jesus to show us what he was like. And so when Jesus came, he healed people who were sick, he fed people who were hungry, but the religious people killed him because they didn't like what he had to say. But because Jesus died, he took on himself the consequences of this pollution, the bad things that I've done, the evil that we see all around us, and this death sentence can be broken.
Yeah, and it was an example of given an opportunity, given favor that made no sense.
Yeah, and then had more invitations after that, and then as well on OTV, which is the affiliate that is endorsed by Hezbollah, and able to talk clearly about Jesus on that program as well. So it was amazing what God did, for sure.
Yeah. So guys, why did you come here?
To hear music.
Did you hear about No Longer Music?
No.
But do you know it? Yeah, like what do you expect to see from the show?
Here?
Yeah.
Mosh pits and headbanging, craziness.
That was the first show of that tour, the second time we were there, and we were actually the judges of a heavy metal battle of the bands. So we're in this club, you know, even that concept, if you say that sentence, that we're in this club that has the sexual name, and we're gonna be the judges of a heavy metal battle of the bands in Beirut, Lebanon. I mean, really none of that makes sense. So it's just continuing to dispel the myth that that the Middle East is unreachable and that they're not like us. And truthfully, like you said, that club could have been in Sao Paulo or Berlin or anywhere.
I believe that Beirut is sick of hearing about religious ideas, and you need to know God. And I also believe that He wants to take you into His arms, just like in this drama. Maybe you're like the girl and you feel abused by the world. You've been raped by the world. Or maybe you feel like the guy. Maybe you've hurt other people. Well, I'm here to tell you that Jesus breaks the chain.
And I think the thing we saw is that we didn't have to go in, we could be very clear with the gospel message. Like, you were able to step off the stage after the concert and very clearly share the message of Jesus and invite people to respond. And they're very open and hungry because their perception, and you spoke a lot against this, their perception of religion is these violent divisions and religious things that are controlling and want to kind of control them. And so you spoke of freedom, and freedom that was found in a relationship with God through Jesus and what He did on the cross, and they were so open to that. And so it really showed us that we can speak clearly to these people in the Middle East and that they are hungry and open if they can just have the opportunity.
God bless you. Goodbye.
I think more than anything, it shaped our understanding that Middle East young people are no different than young people all over the world. They love music and art, they're hungry for the truth, and if we are willing to go, they will listen. We'd seen God do amazing things in the Middle East. In 2007, we were able to openly proclaim the gospel in a town in Turkey, where this had likely not happened for over 1,000 years. We preached Jesus among riots and with metalheads in Beirut in 2008 and 2009. We shared God's love on national television that aired all over the Middle East in 2010. In 2011, God would ask us to go even deeper and opened up a door for us to go to northern Iraq.
But even we're thinking, there's got to be a limit to this, right? I mean, Iraq? I mean,
Exactly.
you know, I'm embarrassed to admit that I thought it's going to be camels and tents, and there, you know, how is this going to work?
All right, so here we are in Dohuk, northern Iraq, and we're in the back of a pickup truck, and we're going somewhere. Not entirely sure where.
It's really what you'd expect.
Yeah.
Really hot and it's really dusty.
Really hot and dusty.
I mean, it's a pretty shallow assessment thus far.
For me, when the idea of globalized Middle East youth really was cemented was when we were in Iraq. And we went to Iraq in 2011, and that had come about because of some connections we'd made in southeastern Turkey in 2008. So this had been kind of a buildup that led us there. And we had this feeling of what is it going to be like to go to Iraq? You know, and this was still when the war was very much still going on in various ways, and there was a sense of how in the world are we, this Western rock band, going to be relevant in a place like Iraq? And
or survive.
Say where your name and where you're from. Just say.
My name is.
Yell.
My name is Man and my from is Iraq.
What kind of music do you like?
I like hip hop and rock.
Very good.
Any music English.
Yeah.
Any music English I like it.
Okay.
So I come here to show the band where they speak, they singing rock, and I said awesome, man, awesome.
Yeah.
And thank you very much for you because you come here in Iraq.
was a really incredible time to be there and to open our eyes even more to the idea of globalized Middle East youth and how they can be reached, and how they can be reached in modern ways, and they want to engage with you. And so it really pushed and gave me this vision. We need to be there. We need to go there. And that has led to our whole focus on reaching globalized Middle East.
And it wasn't just that we went and we survived.
Right.
Right? I mean, we were seeing young people giving their lives to Jesus.
Following Jesus is not just another religious system. It's about having a personal relationship with God through Him. It's not about doing certain religious things to earn God's love. It's about surrendering your life to Him, and then when you do that, you'll be free. If there's anyone that wants to know Jesus like I'm talking about, I want you to raise your hand. Don't be ashamed. If you want to know Jesus like I'm talking about.
Well, actually, there's a lot of good listeners here, you know, especially for such a gospel and rock and roll and other kind of music. So I guess you're in the right place here. You know, a lot of people like that. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not Christian, but I'm cool with it, and everybody else just like me, because it's awesome. It's freaking great, man.
It's, you know, it's funny because it's like you have so many misconceptions about it when you come here. I mean, for me, the fact that we're at this theme park and there's a roller coaster here, to me, I thought like this place was like just gonna be sand and some tents and maybe a camel or two. And I think the biggest wake-up call for me is the truth of the fact that there is a hungry, young demographic. And so, I mean, these kids are Western, really, living in the East, and are ready for the truth. And I think a band like No Longer Music totally works here.
Art is as relevant here as it is in Minneapolis, as it is in Nashville, as it is in Germany. I mean, it's unbelievable how into music and into art they are. They're hungry, they're searching, and they're just as influenced by art and music as they are anywhere else in the world.
The Middle East can seem impossible. How could you talk about Jesus in a place like that? But what we have experienced in No Longer Music is that there are no closed doors for the gospel. It has not been easy, but God has been with us everywhere we have gone. And what we've experienced is that the Middle East is open to the gospel. I believe that the church needs to open its eyes to the reality that there are no places that Jesus can't go. I believe God would call more people in the church to go, to give, and to pray for the Middle East. But it begins by seeking God. It begins by understanding that He is bigger than any power, any principality, any religion. And then saying, God, I will go wherever you call me to go, no matter the cost, because I believe that you are powerful and that there are no closed doors for you.
like to know God like I'm talking about?
Böyle bahsettiğim gibi Tanrı bilmek isteyen kimler var? Evet, harika.
Okay, I just want to bless you.
No Longer Music continues to go to the Middle East today, and we are excited about all the things God is going to do in this tough part of the world. The Bible says that the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few, and this simply isn't right. Our heart is to not only go, but to challenge those in the church that it is possible to reach young Middle Easterners. We want to see those in the church go and give and pray. We will go to the Middle East. We will proclaim Jesus. Will you join us?